let's get started. Welcome everyone to the webcast today on 2D to 3D workflows. My name is Jatin, and I am an AEC BIM consultant here at A2K Technologies. I've been asked to go through with you a brief overview of how we can take a 2D CAD drawing, bring it into a 3D environment like Revit effectively, and continue the design development process. This demo will include points such as how to prepare a CAD drawing for linking/importing, controlling visibility, reusing CAD details created in 2D, converting CAD objects into Revit elements, and etc. I'll be using a combination of AutoCAD 2021 and Revit 2022 in the demo portion. There will be a short Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to jump in with some questions. Okay, before we get to the main topics, just a brief overview of what A2K Technologies is and does. We are a IT solutions organization that primarily sits within the infrastructure, mining, construction, and manufacturing industries. We help organizations within these industries by delivering complete technology solutions and support services, such as consulting and education. Autodesk products as well, of course, is a part of the said solutions. Why A2K? Mainly three reasons. We have an excellent ANZ footprint with offices in large parts of Australia and New Zealand. We're actually one of the largest Autodesk partners in the world and considered by businesses we deal with to be a trusted advisor. In addition to Autodesk, we also partner with vendors such as Microsoft, HP, Lenovo, Unity, and et cetera. Largely because most of us are from the industry, we do understand the challenges our clients face, and therefore we can deliver solutions through a combination of experience and innovation. A little bit about me. My name is Jatin Sharma. I have over 7 years experience in the construction industry as a BIM manager, designer, and technical instructor. Currently, my role at A2K is that of a AEC BIM consultant, and my software skills include AutoCAD, Revit, BIM Collaborate Pro, Navisworks, Autodesk Format, 3ds Max, and Autodesk Build. I actually initially completed a Bachelor of Science majoring in geology and physics before accidentally stumbling into the building industry, initially working as a draftee and then transitioning into a Revit certified professional, and obviously from there, a BIM consultant. Okay, so let's get to the meat of the webinar. I've got an agenda here so you know a little bit more about what points we're actually going to be going over. So the first workflow example will be how we can bring a 2D CAD drawing into the Revit environment and then continuing the design process. The key points that I hope you'll kind of take away from this workflow example is how to prepare the CAD file, the concept of linking versus importing, and a little bit of basic Revit modeling, as well as view templates. The second example is how we can reuse 2D CAD details in a 3D environment. This is super useful, so you don't have to recreate all of the CAD details you may have already in your AutoCAD and having to do them again once you're inside Revit. Again, key points here is the process of importing, understanding what drafting views are in Revit, and connecting these drafting views back to callout views. We'll also go through the query and explode tools in Revit, which allow you to convert 2D objects into Revit elements. Okay, perfect. All right, first up is how we can effectively get our 2D drawing into the 3D environment so it's easy to work with once it's inside Revit. Key points there again. We're going to be preparing that CAD drawing, understanding some differences between linking and importing, and creating some basic components once we're inside Revit. Okay, so let's get into our demo. I'm just going to open up my AutoCAD here, which contains the DWG file. I've got a simple 2-story building, which let's say the architectural team has created. Okay, the first thing to do would be to take off everything you're not going to be using in Revit. So this would include things like any notes, any specifications, any layers that aren't going to be used in Revit. I've already done a lot of the groundwork for this DWG because we only have so much time. So you can see my DWG here contains mostly the elements and little notations that I'm actually going to be using inside Revit. One handy tool, just in case if you're unaware, is if you have components that you're not going to be using in your DWG and they're sort of scattered around the model, what you can do is you can click on any one of the elements, okay? And then right click and then go to select similar. And what that will do is that will go across and find all those corresponding elements. And then you can hit the delete button if you wish to. That's a little handy tip there if you're not used to DWGs. The next thing I would do after doing some deletion would be to purge this model. Okay, and that's fairly easy to do. You can just go to your command line here and just type in purge. Okay, and it'll come up with this purge tool here. And what this does is that it removes any unused named items such as block definitions and layers from the drawing. So if you click on this, it will go ahead and find all the information that's not being used by this DWG, and then you can go ahead and purge all. It is important to note that you may want to purge, once or more than once, so maybe 2 to 3 times, just to make sure that everything is clear and effective for you to use. The next thing I would do after I purge this would be use a tool called Overkill. Okay, so again, you can type it in your command line here, and it's called Overkill. Okay, what this does is it basically cleans up any overlapping geometry by removing duplicated or unneeded objects. So, when you're going about modeling, you might create duplication lines, which kind of is not easy to see in your DWG. So you can use this tool to get rid of them. And it's super effective because when you bring it into Revit and you have duplication of lines, you're going to come across some corruption in your model. So it's very important that you get rid of any duplication as soon as you can. So again, make sure you use the purge and overkill tools. All this stuff for small files, it's not going to make too much of a difference. But once you start working on big design files like hotels, you're going to definitely encounter issues if you're not dressing your DWG correctly before taking it into Revit. One of the other things I've seen some people do when I was working in the industry is to segment actually these different views into different DWG files. Please don't do this because A, it's unnecessary. And also you've actually just kind of increased your workload by like tenfold, because now if you have multiple different DWGs, anytime there's an update to the drawing, you have to go back and make edits to 3 or 4 DWGs instead of just the one. So it's unneeded. The workflow I'm about to show you can make use of just this one DWG, and it keeps things nice and simple. So let's say, I've done my purge, I've done my overkill, and I've deleted all the components I wanted to. So now this is ready. I can go ahead and hit the save button if I want to. And now we're going to bring this into our Revit. Okay, I'm just going to open up my Revit now. And this is my Revit environment here. Now, looking at the design, we can have a pretty rough idea of, what this building is going to be, right? It's a 2-story building. It's got 2 floors and we've got a roof over here. And that's mimicked back in my typical Revit project template. We've got a level 0 and level 1. Yeah, that could be named a little bit better, but we've got our 4 elevation bubbles. And it all seems pretty straightforward. So I feel fairly good bringing this in straight into this environment. For more complex designs, I would highly recommend that you start thinking about creating a more robust project template so it mimics the type of DWGs that you intend to bring in. If you want more information about that sort of thing, just let us know after this webinar. Okay, so what we're going to do to bring in this DWG into Revit, we're actually going to use the Insert tab, okay, up here, and choose the Link CAD option. Okay, there is also an Import CAD option available, which you can see here. The main difference between the two, Link CAD and Import CAD, is that Link CAD actually links to your DWG, which means that it's pathed. So what that means is any changes you make to the DWG, it will show back in Revit, okay? The other thing that you can do is that if someone issues a new version of that design, you can just rename that DWG to be the name of the linked file, replace a new version in that folder location, and Revit will just automatically connect to it so that you're not having to manually make changes and put, go back and forth, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and hit Link CAD up here. When you hit Link CAD, there will be some options available to you here. This is our file, 2-story house plan, okay? And there's some options that will become available. Now, there's some really key options here that you want to be aware of, okay? The first option is current view only, okay? If you check this, then this DWG file will only show on the view that you're on, okay, which is level 0. If this is off, it means that this DWG will show in all of your views, okay? We actually don't want that. There's a much easier way that you can go about this without having this pop up everywhere, which is not actually good and can be quite detrimental. So you want to actually turn this on. I see a lot of people when they first use Revit turn this off, but you want to actually have it on. The next option is colors. Fairly straightforward if you want to preserve the colors that are there in AutoCAD or turn it to black and white. For us, we can just leave it as preserved for now. The Import Units tool, okay, what this does is it basically Revit goes into your AutoCAD and tries to find what units you've been using and then mimic that back in your Revit. The auto detect function is quite robust, but for any reason you don't trust it, that's fine. You can set it manually if you want to as well. Okay, the last thing to be aware of is positioning. Okay, for this example, we'll just use manual origin, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Okay, once we're happy with this, we can go ahead and hit open. Now, because we chose manual origin, you can see that we get to place our DWG. See, where my mouse is actually the 00 of the DWG file. Okay, so that's why it looks like it's so far away, because that where my mouse is where the 00 was back in my AutoCAD. So our objective here is to take our first floor design and place it between our elevation markers like so. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it should be fairly decent. So I might just put it here, okay? And you can see that it's fairly decent and sitting in the right place. So that's my level 0 or, first floor, okay? Once I've placed this, the next thing I have to make sure I do, okay, is click on this and use what's known as the pin button up here, okay? When you pin this, it will show up as a pin icon over here. What this now means is that as I'm working on this model, I can't accidentally move it anywhere. You see that? I can't move it. If I don't have this, then while I'm kind of doing modeling over the top, I'm gonna accidentally move the file here and there, and we don't want that. Okay, so that's like super useful. All right, so we kind of have this in the right place. The next thing we want to do is we want to hone in on this particular plan here. You know, we don't want to see the rest, like these three. That's not relevant to us right now. So what we can do is we can incorporate something that's called a crop view. Okay, so what you want to do is click on the white space. When you click on the white space, the properties of the floor plan will open up. And you want to scroll down and go to the extents option here. In this extent option, there is a crop view. Okay, this enables boundaries for the view. So basically, any model elements that are outside the crop region will not display in the view. So that's pretty good for us. So we're going to turn this on. And when you turn this on, nothing will appear. And you might be like, hey, what's going on? So the easiest thing to do is to go down over here, and there is a show crop region. Okay, by default, this is turned off. If you click on this, it will turn itself on, and now we can see our crop region. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go ahead and we can just do this. Okay. Perfect. You see that? Sometimes every now and again, this thing will get selected and you might accidentally move it. The pin button, you know, make sure that nothing gets moved. So that's looking a little bit better. I might actually just move my elevation a little bit more here and move this elevation a little bit more here. All right. So that looks fairly good. And I've honed in on my crop region, and this is my view here. Okay, so there's one or two more things I do want to tidy up about this. And so what I'm going to do is utilize something that's known as my visibility and graphics, okay? The easiest way to get to that button is either typing in VG in your keyboard or going, you know, to click on this white space and clicking on visibility dash graphic overrides over here. So if you hit this edit option, and go to imported categories, you can see our two-story building DWG and all of the layers over here. See, this is why it was so important that we dressed our AutoCAD drawing properly before we brought into Revit, because all of the layers we see here are all of the layers that we actually need. If there were layers that we had over here and we didn't need them, it was going to cause us issues. Okay, so this is why it's very important that you get the first steps done correctly. So what I want to do is I want to utilize what's known as the halftone tool over here, because these colors are a little bit bright, and I want to sort of dim them down. And what I can do is I can click on this, okay, and I can hit the apply. When I hit apply, you see that it kind of dims down to a halftone and makes it a little bit easier to work with. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to go, okay. Okay, so that looks fairly good. I can kind of see what I'm working with now. So what I might do is begin some very basic modeling stuff. I'm actually going to start with grids, and I'll show you why I'm going to start with grids and you'll see it in just a second. So if I go up to the architecture tab here, I'm going to go to grid. Okay, or you can type in GR if you wanted to as well. All right, so I'm going to make one grid here. I'm just going to rename this to be A. Okay, and then once I do this, I'm going to click on this A, and I'm just going to use the copy tool. Very easy. And I'm going to go to B, boom, boom, D, E. Oh, let's get that right. F. Not sure why this is called I, but that's fine. We can change that. Okay. Let's just change that to I so that it's the same as our DWG. I think that was J or something. Yeah, cool. So those are our grid lines there. It's very straightforward. And let's do the same here for our grid lines. on this axis. So very handy tip for you. If you click on this grid, you can actually utilize what's known as create similar. Okay, so instead of having to go back to architecture and go grid lines and do all that stuff, you can just use the create similar tool, or shortcut is CS. So we can click on this. It allows us to create that grid line again. Turn this to 1. Okay, click on our grid line, copy, and this should be nice and easy. Boom, 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 and boom. All right, there we go. Cool. So those are our grid lines done. I'm actually just going to move these grid lines all the way across so that it's nice and neat. And you can do that by just extending that little, excuse me, this little circle up here. Let's make that a little bit more perfect. And we might do the same here. Excuse me, there we go. Bring that all the way across and we can do that. So the reason why I've done grid lines first is because when you do grid lines, they copy across all of your different views. So if I go to level 1, we can see here that my grid lines are here already. Okay, so it's one of the easiest ways of beginning your actual design process inside Revit. So I might actually just bring this across too. Might just do a couple more. So you can see it's fairly easy and straightforward to do. Okay. All right. So let's say that we go across now and we do a couple more grid lines. Let's say that we do these as well, if we wanted to. Okay, and now we're fairly confident. Okay. So now that we've done a couple of these grid lines, we want to take this DWG and we want to actually go to our level 1 and stack it on our level 1 and have our level 1 floor plan, or I should say the second floor floor plan. The easiest way to do this is if you click on the DWG, okay, you can actually utilize what's known as the copy to clipboard functionality here. If you click on this, it will be put into your clipboard. And if you go to level 1, okay, you can actually hit the paste from clipboard button and paste it to where you would need. But obviously what we need here is this level 2 floor plan, right? Because right now it's in our, it's our first floor. So in order to move this DWG to exactly where we need it to, we can use what's known as the Align tool under the Modify tab, okay? So if you go to Modify and you go to the Align tool, and remember we created our grid line, so now this is going to be nice and easy. So I'm going to choose my one grid line over here, and then next is the one that I want to move, and look at that. It's exactly where we need it to be. And what I can do then is just make sure that, all this stuff is done. Oh, actually, 1 second. Let me just go back a step. There we go. And then there we go. All right, so now that's in perfectly exactly where we need it to be. All right, so now it's in place. Remember, we always pin it so that it doesn't move. So now it's pinned, and then click on the white space, scroll all the way down, turn on our crop view, and make our crop view region visible, and do the same thing, exactly like how we did it for our first floor. Okay, and when I'm done, I can just turn this off. So now this is our, our level 2 floor plan, and now it's sitting perfectly exactly where we want it, just like our level 0. Okay, so if you had multiple levels, obviously you just kind of go through this workflow over and over again until you got exactly what you needed. Now, the one thing that is kind of cumbersome here is the fact that I'll have to now change all of the view settings, just like what I did for level 0, right? And if I had like multiple floors, even with the crop viewings and all that stuff, it'd take a long time. And we can actually eliminate a lot of that by utilizing what's known as a view template, okay? So what I'm going to do is this level 0, I'm going to just make this 1:50. There we go. That's quite good. Okay, I like that. All right. So with regards to view templates, if you go up here onto the View tab, there is an option available called View Templates. If you click on this View Templates, there is something available called Create Template from Current View. If you click on this, you can give it a name. So maybe we'll just call this Plan View, and I'll go OK. So you can see there's some stuff that comes out of the box, and this is our plan view here. What the view template does is that it takes all of the information that's noted in here and saves it for you so that you don't have to like repeat the same process over and over and again on different views. So that's things like the view scale, our overrides we did for our halftone, our crop region, all that information gets saved here as part of this view template. So now if I go OK, I can click on this white space, go to my floor plan, and I can actually assign this view the view template. So if I click on this view template, I can click on Plan View, and I can go OK. And if I go to level 1, right, I can go to my view template option again, click on Plan View, and I go OK. See, that makes all the changes for me. It's gone to 1:50. It's done it by halftone. It's done everything for me. But the other key thing that view templates allows you to do is it allows you to standardize this process and your documentation across all of your projects, okay? Because now that this has been assigned a view template, I can't actually make changes. You see that? I can't make changes. I can't go into visibility and graphics and turn things on and off. Okay, so what you're doing is that you're grabbing that ability away from users that aren't as well versed in Revit and making sure that it's consistent across the board so that anyone who's working on projects that you're involved in, if you have these view templates, then it's all there for your users. They're not having to, make any changes, and perhaps you don't want them to make changes, whatever the case may be. But essentially, you're introducing a level of consistency across your projects over and over again, which is super, super useful. The other hint I want to actually talk about before we go any further is something called reference planes. Now, we've done all this work, but we haven't actually checked if everything is aligned properly, as in, done like another once over, okay? The easiest way to do something like that is heading over to the architecture tab up here, or structure tab if you wanted to, any one of the primary discipline tabs, and clicking on what's known as a reference plane. Okay, a reference plane is basically a plane that you can use for like a reference, but it doesn't affect your actual model. Okay, so it's really, really useful. One of the best ways that you can make use of it within our workflow right now is utilizing this back wall, right? Because the back wall should remain the same across all of your levels, right? So what you can do is you can utilize the Pick Lines tool to select this back wall. And when you create this reference plane, it will initially create itself, and then you can use the little circle here to drag it all the way out. Okay, we're going to drag this all the way out. And we're going to name this. It's extremely important that you name all of your reference planes, because if you don't, no one else is going to know what they're used for. And it's going to get really, really messy, because you might create a whole bunch of them depending on what discipline you're with. So for now, we'll click to name this, and we'll call this back wall. Okay, now watch this. So I've created this reference plane, and it's called back wall, and it's in my level 0. If I go to level 1, look here, there's that reference plane with the back wall. So I know I've done good work, because this reference plane is sitting perfectly, exactly where it's supposed to be. If there's any problems with how you're stacking your DWG, if there's any problem with what the architect has sent or another discipline has set in terms of elevations not being correct, grid lines not being correct, it will show up here. Okay, by using these reference planes, you'll be able to quickly find out exactly what has gone right and what has gone wrong. So make sure you use reference planes as much as you can. I mean, the next steps here is I would just begin drawing walls and windows and doors and start fleshing out this model process. We've only got so much time, so I'm going to step back for a second and move on to our next workflow. But essentially, our DWG is now in our Revit, and all that's left for us to do is essentially continue on creating walls. So you can go up to the architecture tab here, create walls, and this would, connect back to your DWG. And similarly, doors, windows, all those components you can start creating. And if it gets a little bit too much seeing, all these other little elements in your DWG, remember, you can go to visibility and graphics, shortcut is VG, and turn off your layers. Now, obviously, I can't turn them off because I've incorporated a view template. Again, see, it's so important that you incorporate this. But if I didn't have one, I'll be able to mix and match as I needed to. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and just close this up, and we will head back to our live demonstration. Okay, the next example that we'll go through is how we can reuse our 2D CAD details in Revit. All right, the key points for this example is understanding how we import a CAD file. See, before we did what was known as linking. This time we're going to use the import tool, and I'll show you why we use the import tool in the demonstration. But we're going to be using the import tool to bring in the CAD file into what's known as a drafting view in Revit, and connecting this view to a callout view. Okay, we'll also go through the query and explode tools in Revit, which will become available to you because of the import functionality. Right? So we'll go back into our demonstration. I'm actually pretty excited to show you this workflow as well. It's quite good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project. Okay, and I'm just going to create a new file over here. All right, so what I might do is I'm just going to create some walls very, very quickly. Bear with me. Make this go up to first. Oh, oops. Okay, and let's just go to the ground floor. And that. All right, so those are all walls there. Are they going up to first? Yep, cool, perfect. All right, so now that I've done the walls, I'm actually going to put a roof in very, very quickly. Don't worry, this will all make sense in just a second. Put a roof in. In fact, for this roof, let's give it an overhang. Let's give it a 500 millimeters overhang, and let's give it a slope as well. So these two parts is going to have a slope. We know it's a slope because there's a degrees option. If we turn this off, you'll see that there's no degrees option available. Okay, I might just put a 5 degrees. Okay, as well. Okay, so we've got a roof now. Am I happy with that? Yep, that looks fairly decent. So I'm going to go, okay, so if I go to my 3D view, I've got a very, very basic roof. And so if I go to my section, you can see that roof over here. All right. Again, this is just a very quick example. So obviously this design is nowhere near perfect, but that's okay. Okay, so this is our simple section view across the building. Let's imagine ourselves in a situation. Let's pretend that this was a fully fleshed out design, and we had a standard eaves detail, let's say, that we can apply between this wall and roof over here. But we don't want to obviously start doing all that stuff in Revit. We've got an AutoCAD. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to take what we have in AutoCAD, plug it into Revit, and then connect it, and we should be golden. In order to do this, the first thing we want to do is create what's known as a drafting view. Okay, and you can find that up here in this view tab. There's something available called a drafting view. Okay, a drafting view is different from all these different types of views. Okay, a drafting view in Revit are basically blank views with no reference to the model. Okay, so they're just blank views that you can use for things like details, but they don't essentially make changes back to your model. Okay, these views are really useful to add details that are view specific. Okay, so to create a drafting view, you can click on this button here called drafting view, and you can give it a name. So for us, we might type in eaves detail. We can give it a scale of, I don't know, 1/5. That's fine. And we can go, okay. When you do this, you see here our drafting views option gets created in our project browser, and it's named eaves detail. Okay. So now that we've got our drafting view, what we can do is go to our insert tab up here. And instead of going to link Revit, we're actually going to go to import CAD. Okay, we're going to use our import CAD option, not link Revit for this situation. So if we go to import CAD, we've got our detail view eaves overhead. So it's our basically a very standard detail. You see, this is grayed out already. It's always going to be ticked, so we don't need to worry about that. You can change the colors if you want to. Again, very similar properties which are available for you, exactly like link Revit. The positioning, we can probably just leave it at we can just leave it at manual origin if we wanted to. Import units, you can leave it at auto detect or set a manual one if you'd like, or we can just go open. If we scroll out, it's way out here, so we'll just place that. Don't worry too much. This white space just extends across everywhere. It will auto-correct itself once we have it in place. So this is our detail here. Now, if I click on this detail, there are a couple more options which are actually available to us that wouldn't normally be available to us if we chose the link CAD option. The first one is this query tool, and then the explode tool. Okay, we'll go through this in just a second. I'll show you how to connect this back to Callout, and then we'll jump back here. But just take note of the fact that these two buttons are going to be important to us. Okay, let's say for the sake of the conversation that we were happy with this detail. Okay, and we wanted to connect it back into our section over here. What we can do is head over to the View tab. Okay, go over to Callout and click on Rectangle. Now, this is very key. Before you draw your Callout view, you have to turn on reference other view. You cannot retrospectively turn this on. So if I was to create it, and if I click on it again, it's grayed out for me. Okay. So you have to make sure that before you draw your callout view, that you turn this on, and then you can choose the drafting view that you want to reference. So for us, it will be the eaves detail. And then we can go ahead and create our callout view. And now we've got a callout view that's connected to the drafting view. How do you check? Very easy, just double click on this and it will go straight to your drafting view. So now we know it's connected. So if I was to then place this on a sheet, this information would populate in and of itself, and I know it's linked back to my eaves detail. So that's pretty straightforward, very, very easy to do. And that means that you don't need to recreate the wheel. Now, let's say, for the sake of the conversation, that we weren't happy with how this DWG came in. Obviously, it's got different colors, and there's some changes that you want to make. How do you go about doing that? If you click on this DWG, remember we're talking about the query tool and explode tool? Well, that's how it comes into place here. Okay. What the explode tool allows you to do is that you can actually convert these CAD objects into Revit elements. And then from there, you can actually make the appropriate edits. Okay. The query tool, okay, determines the identity of an import object and the layer in which it resides. So if I didn't know what layer this description was in, I could go up here, go to query, and click on this, and then it would tell me. So this is in this layer here. And if I wanted to, I could delete it or hide it. So the query tool you want to use to find out what layer the components are in so that you can make an appropriate decision. And then the explode tool, like I say, basically breaks down this DWG to its next highest level of elements. So if you click on this little downward arrow, there's two options available. There's partial explode, and then there's a full explode. A partial explode basically breaks down this import into, like, let's say, for example, like this DWG was made up of different blocks. So this text was one block, this was another block, this kind of geometry was another block. It will basically explode and turn it to individual blocks. If you choose the full explode, it will basically treat it like, like the explode option in AutoCAD basically breaks this down to its lowest form of elements. So you'll be able to choose each individual line and the text. So if I go to explode and I go full explode, I'll show you what that looks like now. If I go full explode, you can now see I can click on any of these individual elements and I can actually make changes to it if I wanted to. So if I, like, for example, this text here, I don't like the fact that it's in, the kind of blue, very light blue color. I can go ahead and I can go edit type. The color here, I can change this color to black. And I can hit apply. And you can see now it's changed all this color automatically. Let's say I don't like the fact that this grid line is here. I can get rid of that if I wanted to. That looks a little bit better. I can change, this isn't probably not supposed to be here. I can probably just choose that. If I wanted to, I can go to any of these particular filled regions and make changes. I can click on these individual lines and give it a new type of line style if I wanted to, just for fun. If I choose dotted loose, it's going to show us something else. See that dotted loose line? I can make whatever changes I want. Basically, by converting these DWG components to Revit elements, I now have the ability, I can even delete these if I wanted to. But again, we're doing all this manually, but if you had a view template, okay, that had like a detail view template already in place, then you don't have to do this over and over again. You'd press one button, hit choose your particular view template, hit the apply button, and then it will change everything, and then you're done. So if you had like a view template for just drafting, then you've just saved yourself so much work. So it's very, very important that you have these view templates and you're utilizing this in your Revit project template, okay? Because it's not only for this project, but for any new project, you have it available to you. Okay. I can get rid of this too if I wanted to. You guys get the idea now. Okay, so that's how we can reuse some of our CAD details back in our Revit. So the explode function isn't available when you're linking in CAD, only when you're importing in. So for example, if I was to, let's say, go to the insert tab and go link CAD, and I link this in over here, let's say, and I clicked on this, you see that? Explode is not available. So that's why it's very important that you know the difference between the two, so that you're using the appropriate tool for the appropriate situation. Okay. Perfect. All right. That's pretty much both of our workflows that's available. Now it's time for questions. So feel free to type in all your questions in the Q&A section, and yeah, and let me know your thoughts. I've got a first question from Stella. If you receive an ARC file in Revit and you want to start your MEP model, do you just, yeah. You can, do you use the Revit ARC Revit file as linking? Yes. Yeah, you shouldn't have any problems with that, Stella. Yes, you can. If you want to kind of understand that workflow a little bit more, just get in touch with us. But yes, you're on the right track there. So that was Stella again, once again. Yeah. Do you mind? AJ, thanks for the session. Do you mind to share a little bit about True North and Project North? Yeah, sure. It's probably for this one, AJ, I've got a really good example, but it's outside of this webinar. Can I please get you? We're going to show our email in just a second. If you wouldn't mind emailing me, I can actually go through it a little bit more in depth with you around True North and Project North, because it's particularly useful when you're working with survey. So if I was, and there's a workflow, I believe there's a video that we created for it. So just email us and we'll get you sorted out for that, AJ. Robert, I'm new to BIM. That's fine. What LOD would the model ideally be modeled at, as the drafting detail seems to pick up on? So for so with LOD, it kind of it's more to do with information than like only geometry, if that makes sense. So if you, it really depends on your particular project. So let's say, for example, that you had a project that you're working on where the minimum specifications was LOD 300. Okay, if it was something like LOD 300, then that would mean that you would need to, like, for example, you need to have enough geometry in your AutoCAD where you know, for example, that it's a fridge, not just like a block that looks like a, like a block with the same height and width as a fridge. There should be enough geometry there that you should be able to see it. And then once you bring it into Revit, then you fill it up with the appropriate level of information to then satisfy the LOD 300 requirements. Hopefully that helps answer your question, but essentially your AutoCAD should have enough geometrical information for you to be able to put appropriate parametric data once you're bringing it into Revit. If you want more information, just again, like get in touch with us, but hopefully that sort of put you on the right track. Joel, do you prepare a drafting view for detailing? Yes. Yes. So Joel, do you prepare a drafting view for detailing? Yes, that is correct, rather than capturing detail. That's right. Because if you make details in your model, it will automatically be captured in your particular section view or, elevation view or whatever. Like theoretically, right? Let's say, for example, I, create, go to my ground floor here. Let's say that I create like a wall here, right? And then create like a floor and start doing any detailing that's actually good, that I'm actually gonna model. Anything that I create will get captured in my elevation view, right? So the only purpose of drafting view is to have views for detailing that is not already getting captured in the model itself. Hopefully that's helped answer your question. When you link Revit files and CAD files, how do you send it to? Sorry, Stella, I'm just trying to understand your question. When you link Revit files and CAD, how do you send it to external people? Are you saying, in your example, Stella, are you saying that you have a Revit model and you're working with an external consultant that has an AutoCAD or Revit model and you want to... Yes, that's right. Alternatively, you can make use of cloud products inside Autodesk to make that very straightforward. So you would be looking into something like BIM Collaborate or BIM Collaborate Pro to actually do what's known as live linking between Revit models that are, between different disciplines. So you don't have to consistently keep sending files. For more information, just get in touch with us. There's a webinar we did a couple of weeks ago where I went over how that actually works. So the best option for you, Stella, would be to investigate the BIM Collaborate Pro environment. Otherwise, yes, you should be sending all the files. But the only problem with sending all the files is that it doesn't quite capture all of the design data appropriately, and people can't see the changes until you actually send it to them. Yeah. We've got one from Jim. We use wipeouts in CAD blocks, especially for MIG. These seem to... Yes. We'll need to investigate that a little bit more, Jim. Yes, there are workarounds, but but I'll need to see, I'll need to see what those CAD blocks are and what issues that you're getting, so that we can investigate it appropriately. So again, if you get in touch with your account manager at A2K, or like I say, send us an email, we can assist you and get that sorted out. Yes, there's numerous workarounds people have done around getting between AutoCAD and Revit, because it's such a popular workflow. Will a process piping to be a... Rob, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to by a process/piping/mechanical tab. I mean, there is a mechanical tab right here. It's just called Systems, and that encapsulates all of the mechanical modeling, that you can do. Is that what you're referring to? Are you referring to more like civil related workflows when you're talking about piping? Right. Yeah, I see. So if the objective is to think about modeling like civil pipings and stuff like that, I would highly recommend getting in touch, because you can do workflows between Civil 3D and Revit, which will actually allow you to create the 3D piping geometry that you can bring straight into Revit and have it sit the same place and stuff like that. So for in your situation, Rob, you want to be looking at the workflow between Civil 3D and Revit. And we've done a bunch of webinars on that. And yeah, like I say, again, if you get in touch, we can point you in the right direction. Hopefully that helps you. Yeah, perfect. Any more questions? Does anyone feel like a question hasn't been answered enough? I'm happy to go through it again. I think that was. And just to finish off, I know that we were actually thinking, I said to AJ that, get in touch with us. Please still do. But True North and Project North is you can actually utilize some information in your Manage tab, okay, under like positions where you can rotate and relocate your project. So this is the kind of functionality that you want to be using. I just thought I'd throw that in there, but get in touch and we can provide a proper demonstration. Okay, I think that's all of it. I'll give it one more minute. Yes, Stella, of course. Let me just pause for 1 second. I'll actually put that link in the chat and then we'll call it a day. Just bear with me. I will grab that link for you shortly. Just so you're not having to come back to us just for one thing. Okay, there it is there. That's the link for you. Oh, excuse me, this should be for everyone. There you go. That's the link. Okay, so with that, I think we'll call it. Thanks again, everyone, for coming along and taking a look at the webinar. I'm just going to reshare my screen and show you the email. Okay, so you can email us over here. So the people that I've said, hey, look, get in touch with us, please do, because then we can actually sit down with you and kind of go through the solution properly, especially Jim, AJ, and Robert as well. Awesome. Thanks so much.